Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome into the next episode for our ultimate guide for Anno 1800. Today, I want to talk a little bit more about the mid-game area, late artisans into your engineers, not to investors just yet, but just kind of that mid-game area where a lot of people start struggling with income and trying to produce more and more goods that you need. So with that, let's get started and talk a little bit more about canned food. So everyone's favorite cannery chain, we've already talked about a couple of different times in earlier guides and everything, but I want to make a few more points about it just to kind of drive home some stuff that we have discussed. There's a couple of different things about the canneries that I recommend doing, and one of them is something we've already discussed, and that is waiting until the very end of the artisan tier when you have 1,500 artisans or more before you build a cannery. 1,500 artisans is how many you need to unlock the university. So you have the university unlocked. You can get that built. Go ahead and plop down your canned food chain. Get the canned food going. Turn off canned food consumption to your artisans. If you forget how to do that, really simple. All you've got to do is find an artisan and just click on the canned food and it pauses it. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Then you turn it back on when you're ready. So you'll pause your canned food chain and get that where they're not consuming it. Let it build up a little bit until maybe 100 or 200 canned food. So it might take a little while. Then unpause it. Let the artisans consume the good, fill the residents on up with their max resident population. Then upgrade to your engineers. Upgrade enough into the engineer phase that you can staff everything in the early part of your engineers, a couple of concrete factories, get your electricity going, and some for your spectacle chains, and then turn off consumption of canned goods to both tiers, both engineers and to artisans. What you'll want to do then is keep it paused until you have everything going for electricity and you can power up that cannery and get more of a benefit out of it. That's just my base recommendation for how to deal with the cannery, stuff like that. But of course, there are other things you could do to make the cannery a lot cheaper to operate without needing certain inputs. And most of you know what I'm going to talk about, and that is going to be everyone's favorite Chef Michel. Chef Michel is an epic quality specialist that you can purchase at Eli's Harbor. What Chef Michel does is he replaces the need for goulash with just pigs. So instead of having to have the cattle farms, the red peppers, and the artisanal kitchen, all you'll need is a pig farm. Very simple. Now, the base productivity on a cannery is 1 minute and 30 seconds. If you have it electrified, it goes down to 45 seconds. Mine says 41 because I do have a 16% productivity boost from the Department of Labor with the Palace. But just remember that it's 1.5 minutes normally, 45 seconds with electricity on it. Now, the pig farm produces every 1 minute, so it's a little bit slower. So you will have to have 2 pig farms to supply 1 cannery. If you do a silo on the pig farm, then you can get away with 1 pig farm to a cannery, but it's not an even, so you'll always, it's not an even number, so you'll always have to have a few more pig farms than you do canneries, similar to how the artisanal kitchen situation works, but it is a really good input change because you get rid of a fairly expensive part of the chain where you have to have these right here cost 100 and you'll need at least 2 of them, possibly up to 3 or 4. And you'll need several cattle farms and several red pepper farms. This is several hundred coins worth of maintenance right here you're saving on just by getting a Chef Michel. He also has the extra ability of giving 1 sausage every 2 cycles. So it will help offset the need for slaughterhouses for your workers and your artisans. Chef Michel is like a god tier specialist in the game. He is exceedingly awesome, and I definitely recommend looking for him as soon as possible if you're wanting to get your canned food up and running earlier on in the artisan phase and not waiting until the very end, or if you just want to not deal with the artisanal kitchen at all. It's just really good. I would definitely recommend finding him. There is one other specialist for the cannery. However, she is more of a late game specialist, and you're likely not going to get her anytime soon, and that is Mrs. Mason. I'll go ahead and talk about her real quick just because we are talking about the canned food stuff, but this is, again, more of a late game specialist because she is a legendary. She increases the productivity of the cannery by 50%, and she replaces the need of iron with just flour. So we're literally not even making canned food anymore at this point. We're making burritos. Okay, it's a burrito factory, and they're using the extra burrito, leftover burrito stuff and making tortillas out of it. So yeah, getting some tortillas out of the mix, and not even needing iron and just needing simple old flour. So she is a really good specialist, but again, you're not going to run across her until later on in the game, most likely. Chef Michelle, though, of course, is the number one to go for that cannery. Of course, always, you can still use the actor in the town hall. The actor supplies canned food and rum to all residences within the radius of the town hall that it is slotted in, as long as they have access to a variety theater. Now let's talk about oil for real quick for a moment. Oil is the main resource you're going to be using across many of your islands. You need it for power plants. If you have Bright Harvest, you are going to need it for fuel stations. Oil is a very simple system to set up and understand. Every time you place down one oil well, you get a 100% increase in the productivity of the oil refinery. I have four oil wells. I'm getting a 400% productivity increase, taking the processing time down from a base of 15 seconds down to 3 seconds. You can bring this down to a minimum of 1 second production times. This right here is giving me 16 oil per minute. 16 right there. So not bad. That's enough for one power plant and one fuel station. Let's take a look right here at this oil refinery. This oil refinery has 4 oil wells, but it is producing at 884%. Now, again, part of that is because I have a Department of Labor policy going on with the palace, so you may not have that in the early parts of the game, of course, since you cannot do the palace until you have investors, but you can still get several of these other specialists going on. Faris Al-Sarami, he is an amazing catch-all specialist. He is highly recommended by most people because he affects all production chains, and he increases productivity by 50% while reducing workforce, maintenance, and the chance of riots. He can be purchased at Isabel's Harbor or at Eli's Harbor. Just roll for him, you'll find him. He's again somewhere just shy of 300,000 coins on the purchase cost. The Smokestack Act book is purchased at Archibald's Harbor. It's a semi-common item, even though it is a epic quality. I do see it quite often for sale over there. The way this item right here works is it affects all ironworks and foundries. A oil refinery is considered a foundry. So this does affect it. It does increase the negative attractiveness of it. So the negative attractiveness will go up by 60% with this thing on there. So just be aware of that. But it does have a nice 55% productivity bonus. But those are not the two items that I want to talk about the most. The one that I really want to point out and talk about here is the extra virgin oily sucker. Now, this item is only available if you have the Sunken Treasures DLC, which most people do have because everyone wants to build on Crown Falls. The extra virgin oily sucker has a malice on it of plus 150% chance of fire, but you know what? I don't worry about that. And I don't worry about it because I would rather have that lovely extra goods effect of plus 4 oil every cycle. Now, this isn't an on-use item that lasts for 4 hours. You do have to activate it. You can barely probably tell on YouTube, but if you look right here, it's kind of shaded. I mean, take my mouse away. If you look on the left-hand side over here of the icon, you can see it's nice and purple. If you look over here, it's kind of like, it's, darker, kind of like the others are. It has a really poorly designed timer system on it, basically. But it does last for 4 hours. After that, you will have to re-enable them. Now, this item is actually crafted at Old Nate's Harbor. You go to his airship and go to Trade Union Items, you'll find it right down here at the bottom. It takes 5 special scrap, 10 steel, 10 brass, and 5 gold bars. Now, the 5 special scrap, some people are like, oh god, I have to dive. No, don't worry about diving. Check out the video pinned in the comments down below about how to get special scrap really, really easy without ever having to dive. The steel and brass are negligible, not a big deal. Now, the 5 gold bars might be a bit of a problem if you are not either importing gold bars or buying it for pirates, or if you have not gotten around to being able to unlock gold to be processed at a goldsmith. So if you cannot get your hands on this one right here, just step back one and do the oily super sucker. You just need 10 of the rare scrap and then 10 steel and 5 brass. It does only give you 2 oil every cycle, but it is still really good. Either of these are excellent choices. I would not even do the green one. It's kind of like, man, whatever, don't even mess with it. Go for one of these two right here. They're a lot better use of your materials and time. You do craft 3 of them every time you make 1, so it's a pretty decent deal. Now, why am I saying that that item is really, really useful? Well, do you remember down on the other island where I was making 16 oil per minute with just my 4 oil wells? Well, let's take a look and see how much I'm making on this island. 177. That's insane. That is mostly due to the extra virgin oily sucker. That is giving me a crap ton of oil every cycle right there. The 2 items I have affecting it are boosting them up to 884%, but then the rest of it is coming from the extra virgin oily sucker. It is an amazing item. It gives you so much oil. We take a look at my new world where I have lots of oil already set up. You'll see that I'm only getting 138 per minute just from the new world. So Crown Falls is already producing more just from those 4 than I have in the entire new world. Now, later on in the game, you could even add another item on there. Again, this is more later game stuff, but let's go ahead and take a look at it. Something like the Bechamel Converter. Again, this affects all ironworks and foundries, and it increases productivity by 60 while reducing workforce by 50%. We slot that thing in there, and then we go and take a look at it again. Now we are up to 225 oil per minute. Absolutely bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. That is an insane amount of oil. This right here is enough oil for a lot. I'm not even going to try to figure out how much oil this can cover. It's a lot, guys. Like, it's insane. I could probably supply just about everything I need just with Crown Falls for the most part. So be sure to take a look at your oil refineries once you get them set up and running. Try to get some items onto them as soon as possible. There are other items, of course. Again, Control-T, select that unknown box, and just type in refinery. There are quite a few really good items for the refinery that you could probably get your hands on. If you don't have access to some of these items, just take a look around and see what you can find and where it might come from and what you might want to use. Stuff like the heavy coal permit is a really good one. It is a step down from the Lord Footprint's Gargantuan Smokestack Act. So if you can't find this one, just go ahead and grab this blue one right here. A lot of people seem to come across things like the drills from quests. These are also really good items if you can get them. The fine handheld power auger is a really good one as well because it reduces workforce. Doesn't have as much high productivity, but it is one that I do see people get quite often from quests. So make sure you are boosting those oil wells and those oil refineries. Get as much production out of those as possible because it will save you a lot of money and workforce and having to have fewer trains going around clogging up and getting those nasty, annoying blocked track segment warnings coming up at you. Now, for your concrete factories, there is an item that I actually overlooked a lot and never even considered that I think a lot of people don't even think about themselves either, and you should, and that is the cementer. I never even considered this guy until recently. He affects the concrete factory and he has a replaced input, and instead of needing cement, just need clay. That's incredibly useful. Typically, you're only going to have 1, maybe 2 limestone quarry locations on an island if you're lucky. But you're going to have multiple clay deposits, and you don't need as many bricks later on because you can also buy bricks from Archie, and you can just pump out bricks from different methods. However, this right here allows you to get a lot more concrete going on. We take a look right here. This limestone quarry is producing every 30 seconds. That is because I do have a small Bronze Eggs expedition showing 28, but it is normally every 30 seconds. Now, it can be powered up, but it's way back here in the back. Like, it's way back here. Now, you can use certain items and trade unions later on to provide electricity to these, but then you're having to, set all of that up and use influence on them, and it's kind of like, it's annoying. Plus, they can be a little expensive at 225 maintenance, and they're just generally kind of aggravating to use. Clay pits also produce every 30 seconds, but they are typically located in areas that are easier to get to with electricity and not so far away. And like I said, you're typically not going to need nearly as much clay, and you'll have more clay deposits than you will limestone deposits. So swapping out the need for limestone with clay on your concrete factories is absolutely incredible. He's a very easy specialist to come across. He's sold at Eli's Harbor. So look for him and swap out that need for cement for clay. It's going to save you a lot of maintenance cost early on. 250 maintenance costs is considerable amount of money early on in the game, especially when you need so much reinforced concrete, and it will save you up to 500, 1,000 coins just by replacing this and not having to have 2, 3, 4 limestone quarries going on. So definitely a really, really useful one. Now, the General Foreman we already talked about briefly in the last video when we talked about early game stuff, so I'm not going to really talk about him here. But again, he affects brick factories and concrete factories. 60% reduced workforce, always good. The extra steel beams, 1 every 5 cycles, again, is just phenomenal. So definitely, if you're using him on your brick factories, either swap him over to your concrete for the time being, or just try to find you another one of him and go ahead and use that. Beyond that, anything else for your concrete factories is kind of standard things. A ferrous al cerami is always a good idea. You can also go and craft a Fortunate MK3 at Nate's Harbor for a 35% boost. So there are several different options to further increase your concrete factories. But these two guys right here, the General Foreman and especially the Cementer, big ones that I think you should definitely be looking into and putting on your concrete factories. We're going to swap away from the trade unions for just a moment and talk about probably one of the more overpowered specialists in the game, and that is Mr. Garrick. Mr. Garrick is everyone's favorite town hall specialist, probably alongside the actor. What he does is any residents with the bank need fulfilled are provided with pocket watches and jewelry, and they also gain +5 bonus income from having a bank. Pocket watches and jewelry are two very expensive chains. They are somewhat annoying chains just because of the gold requirement. Of course, with the gold, you can swap those things out with certain specialists to not need gold bars at all. But being able to absolutely replace them entirely with a specialist, it saves you workforce, it saves maintenance, it saves trade routes, it saves so much, all at the cost of just a single town hall slot. Pocket watches and jewelry provide a ton of money as well. And so getting a Mr. Garrick put in is a good investment of your money and your reroll costs at Eli to try and find at least 2 or 3 of him to slot into your town halls for your engineers and later on your investors. For your clockmakers, once you unlock that, and if you're not using a Mr. Garrick and you need to start producing your own pocket watches, go ahead and find yourself a chronometrist Kiara. You can purchase her from Eli's Harbor. She shows up, semi randomly. I do see her sometimes, and then sometimes I never see her. Just like anything else with that stupid trader. But if you can find her, she does replace the need for gold with just brass. This is going to save you a lot of money and a lot of headache. Brass is somewhat easier to get. Copper and zinc can be kind of annoying for some people to get their hands on, but if it's not a big deal for you, then go ahead and use her. She also reduces the maintenance cost by 40%, which just means that your maintenance cost versus income ratio collapses a little bit more, and you'll make more money off of supplying those pocket watches. And you all knew it was coming. We're going to end the video talking about coffee here. Coffee is, of course, everyone's absolute bane. Everyone hates trying to produce coffee. The engineers, investors just drink so much of it that it is unbelievable. One of the first items I always look for my coffee roasters is Cecilia. Cecilia increases productivity by 40% and gives chocolate 1 every 4 cycles. So the chocolate does not come in handy now, but it will come in handy later on with your investors. The 40% boost to your coffee roasters is just a massive bonus. You want to try to pump out as much coffee as you can from those coffee roasters. Being able to boost it up with Cecilia plus get the extra chocolate is always a good idea. Of course, while we're talking about coffee roasters, we'll go ahead and really quickly touch on the legendary specialist Marco della Mocha, Crusher of Beans. He increases productivity by 50% and gives coffee beans 1 every 2 cycles. So this just decreases the amount of coffee beans you have to have. Again, he's a legendary, more for the late game, but he is a really good one that you can keep your eye out for later on as well. Now, there is one other item for the coffee roaster you can also get early on in the game, the coffee sommelier. Now, she only increases by 30%. Now, she does decrease the workforce needed by 50%, and she also employs ornilleros instead of obreros. She's a pretty important one as well. I don't currently have her slotted in because I'm using some other specialists, but she is absolutely crucial. Your obrero workforce, you really want to save them for things like your cigar factories and stuff like that. Ornilleros are a lot easier and cheaper to maintain than obreros, so it's quicker just to go ahead and swap them out, decrease the workforce from 150 on your coffee roasters down to 75, plus any additional workforce reductions you can do, such as from Ferros al Cerami. And then, of course, further increase the productivity by 30%. So again, very, very useful. But that's not the only thing about coffee we want to look at. We also want to look at the coffee plantations. There are 2 easily purchased specialists in the New World that I definitely recommend sticking on your coffee plantations. The Arborist increases productivity by 15%, decreases the number of modules by 10%. So that is really, really good. Try to find her. You're going to find her at Isabel's Harbor or at Anne Harlow's Harbor. Horticulturist Herman is also really, really amazing. 20% productivity increase, another decrease of the number of modules. Always awesome right there. And also gives red peppers to potatoes and grapes. Now, some people think this is really, really awesome and useful. To me, it's okay. It's not the worst thing. It's not the best thing. Those red peppers, potatoes, and grapes, you could just send them back to the old world if you need them, or you could just have a ship picking them up and selling them to Isabel or something to get rid of them and just keep them out and make a little extra money off of them. Now, the other item that you can easily get early to mid-game is going to be another Ferros, of course. Just increase that productivity by 50%. And don't forget to tractor up your coffee plantations as soon as you can afford to. Later on in the game, you can get stuff like the patent seed drills, or you could also get something like a golden harvester from the future to give you some gold ore every 25 cycles, or maybe the country bumpkin cigar roller. These are all things you can find and craft. And then there is, of course, the Dr. Ali Al-Zahir. He does boost by 30%. He's kind of a slight upgrade from Horticulturist Herman at the cost of, instead of decreasing modules, it just gives you more old world goods. Honestly, I don't find Ali Al-Zahir as useful. An additional 10% increase, but losing that 20% number of modules, to me, is not as useful. Of course, if you have a case for why you think it is, let me hear it down below in the comments. I'm certainly open to hearing different things like that. One of the best items you can get, though, for any sort of plantation is a miraculous steel plow. 50% productivity boost, 50% workforce, and 50% maintenance cost decrease. The only problem with the miraculous steel plow is, well, until the Research Institute came along, the only way to get one was get super lucky and get it from a quest. That was it. That was the only way to get this stupid thing. Now we can find it in the Research Institute. Now, there are 2 specialists I want to talk about real quick regarding coffee. The first is Fernando de Faro. He provides coffee, just straight up provides coffee to all residences within the range of a town hall. However, you can only ever have one of him. He's only awarded by the Queen at the end of the Sunken Treasures questline after you have built a World's Fair. Once you've done that, you will get him as a reward. So you can only ever have one of him. He cannot be crafted at the Research Institute. So just be aware of that, but he is there if you want to use him. He's really, really useful. The other item regarding coffee is the don't leave it till later espressonator. I hate that name. It's so dumb. But it is a transmuted item or given as a quest reward from Old Nate in Sunken Treasures, or the transmuting part is done in the Arctic, okay? You can transmute this in the Arctic at Old Nate's airship. It does reduce coffee need by 30%. So it's really, really handy early on. You can go to the Arctic region as soon as you get to engineers and get that place unlocked and start through the quest line, grab all of your islands up there and start getting Arctic scrap and make some of these. They don't take, it takes 50 Arctic scrap plus some other goods to make it. So the 50 Arctic scrap can be a little annoying to farm up, but once you have it, you can craft a few of these and reduce that coffee consumption early on. Now, there is one more specialist that I want to touch on real fast before we end the video here, and that is a Master Craftsman Frank. He is a specialist that a lot of people don't know about. He affects the fur dealers, he increases productivity by 40%, and instead of fur and cotton fabric, he replaces the input with iron and wool, so he is an upgrade to the costume designer. He also comes with the benefit of producing ponchos, bowler hats, and work clothes one every 12 cycles. Now, the problem with Craftsman Frank is outside of the Research Institute, the only ways to get him is either get lucky on a rescue mission, 1, 2, or 3 skulls, or get a quest from an artisan and you get him as a quest reward, but it's super rare. Or he is one of the possible specialists that can show up if you use the Right to Remain Act at the palace on your public mooring. So other than that and the Research Institute, there is no other way to get this specialist. You cannot purchase him from a neutral trader. But he is really, really useful. Again, he's not one you can easily just go and grab unless you have the Research Institute and you find him in talent development and you craft him under item development. So unless you have that, just keep running rescue missions. If you have the palace later on in investors, use that Right to Remain Act eventually and try to get him through there, or just cross your fingers that you get him from an artisan. He's really, really useful. Being able to get rid of the need for fur and replace it with iron. Now, don't ask me how an iron and wool fur coat works, because I don't know. But if I don't have to have fur anymore, I'm happy. So, works for me with iron and wool. All right, guys, and that is it for me. This was some tips and tricks to get you through the engineer stuff and to give you some ideas on specialists and items you may not have known about to increase those productivities a little bit higher and get around some of the more annoying parts of chains that a lot of people don't like dealing with. If there was some other stuff that you think I've missed or you wanted me to talk about some more, let me know down in the comments and I'll see what I can do about those in the next video. But until then, have a great rest of the day. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time. Take care.